Of course, there are worlds more to discover inside the oldest house when you and your friends play for yourselves.
Oh, how I wish that were true. If you watch this 5-minute gameplay overview trailer and you've played the game, you know that just sadly isn't the case, which genuinely gives me no pleasure to say. As a big Remedy fan, it pains me to be negative about one of their titles, especially when their previous title, Alan Wake 2, is actually my personal favorite game, period. How could the company that produced my favorite game of all time also produce this? Well, going back to its announcement, when I heard Remedy were first working on an FPS online co-op shooter, I was cautiously optimistic. Remedy has never really been a studio to disappoint, with iconic titles like Max Payne 2, Alan Wake, Quantum Break, Control, and Alan Wake 2. Hell, even their modest PC beginnings with Death Rally is, I would even say, a pretty fun time.
Oh my god!
But you may not know, this isn't really the first time Remedy have experimented outside their usual single-player narrative-focused third-person shooter box. In 2014, they experimented with a free-to-play mobile game for iOS called Agents of Storm. I never played it myself. There's little info out there on the game, though you can find some gameplay footage on YouTube. This isn't all that surprising, as it seems to have been scrubbed from the iOS store within only a few years of release, if not less. From what I can gather of the footage I've seen, it was quite simplistic and as grindy and slow progressing as most free mobile games tend to be. Then, in 2022, they developed the campaign mode for Smilegate's Crossfire X. Well, Smilegate developed the multiplayer. Technically, this was Remedy's first go at an FPS title, though that was mostly because that was a gameplay element already set by another studio and franchise outside of their own. Only, like Agents of Storm, this game is also no longer available to buy or play pretty much anywhere as far as I can tell. But it appears to be critically received poorly.
Oh my goodness!
My fear is that history will repeat itself here. I don't want to see the same fate befall Firebreak. I don't want the Remedy team to come away from this game thinking, well, I guess we just can't do other things and should stick to what we always do best, because this is clearly a very creative and talented team of people. And despite the criticisms I'm about to make in this video, that talent and creativity is still visible here in parts, and I'll be sure to call that out whenever I see it as well. It's also worth mentioning that they won't be charging extra for any post-launch content added to the game, and the game also isn't littered with microtransactions, so it's rather consumer friendly in a way you just don't see nearly enough with big game studios these days, particularly online multiplayer focused ones. A little general background context on me, also, since this is my first real review video. I'm generally not a big multiplayer guy. I prefer single player experiences personally, but where I do enjoy multiplayer, it's more often co-op or PvE experiences rather than competitive PvP experiences. It's also easier to critique single player games because people will often use the "it's fun with friends" line for multiplayer games, when yeah, pretty much everything is fun with friends because you're spending time with people you like. And that's already something I see thrown at this game a lot. It's fun with friends. I wouldn't play it solo or in random online matchmaking. At that point, it really sounds like you're suggesting the game isn't fun. What's fun is your friends and spending time with them. That said, I do think voice chat should have been added to the game for public matchmaking.
Oh, Riot Shield! I'm gonna use Riot Shield! What do you want me to do? You tell me what you want me to use! Tell me what the fuck is!
In a cooperative game, it feels pretty odd not to have that feature, but I think the fact that in this co-op game, I managed to complete all it had to offer without even communicating with my teammates says a bit in and of itself about its design. Okay, that's enough foreplay. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, starting with the story. The basic plot of this game is that an FBC, or Federal Bureau of Control, facility, which is an organization established in Remedy's previous game titled Control, has been in lockdown and under attack for 6 years by this supernatural force called the Hiss. And you are a member of a team called Firebreak, sent into this facility to purge it of any and all corruption brought about by the Hiss through the various levels or jobs, as this game puts it, that you can play. And here lies problem number one, because absolutely none of what I just said is communicated in the game itself. Yep, the only reason I know any of this is because of the gameplay overview trailer I referenced at the beginning of this video, and that's not a great sign or first impression. This isn't like, say, the original zombie storyline in Call of Duty, where the story is kind of hidden behind Easter eggs and a general sense of intrigue. No, this game is pretty upfront with the player knowing what they have to do for each job, since it's narrated to us by our announcer Hank.
The furnace is going hog wild. We don't calm it down soon, this whole building is gonna turn into an oven baking a volcano. Eventually we'll deal with the source directly, but for now, it's enough to find whatever transfer bands aren't spinning and get them spinning. Anything to bring that heat down.
Although the general context of what is happening is never really provided, just what we're tasked to do in the current job selected. You can also find these documents laying about, which you might initially think, oh hey, cool, lore, but they just give you upgrade points. They're not things that you can then read in, say, a submenu.
Disappointed!
Then there's also these documents in the loading screens that you can see, which are not only so wordy for loading screen text, and written clearly enough that implies they want us to actually read them. So I don't know why they put them here, where I can only see them for like 5 seconds.
Wow, that's a lot of words. Too bad I'm not reading them.
For characters, there's another announcer we hear Hank talk to in the main menu called Jerry, another FBC employee.
Stupid question, but do you think you'd want to keep working together after the lockdown ends?
Well, nothing personal, Jared, but the minute those front doors open, I ain't looking back.
And you can play as him in the voice menu by the name Pencil Pusher.
Let us clean the house!
Notice how I said voice menu and not character menu. Here, you pick voices for your player to have, and other than Pencil Pusher, they're just Firebreaker 1, Firebreaker 2, Firebreaker 3, and Firebreaker 4, which is an even less involved approach to writing characters than Call of Duty's operative system. Damn, 2 references to Call of Duty already. Okay, I promise I'll try not to make a habit out of this. But essentially, the operator system works a lot like a slightly more personalized version of like Fortnite skins, only with occasional reactive voice lines. That's functionally all they are. Their dialogue is quite basic, they never directly play into story elements or react to story elements in the gameplay, just say generic things like drop them when you kill an enemy or something like that.
Look out! Enemy down! Good work!
Got them in here. That's the shielding gone! Got something. Got him!
Fire! Yeah! Here. Got them in here. Yeah!
Pencil Pusher, or Jerry from what I've gathered, has the most distinguishable personality and involvement in the story, being heard talking to Hank in the main menu, and some other interactions can be actually kind of funny.
Maybe it doesn't get said enough around here, but I'm glad you're with us, Jerry.
Oh, thanks.
As for our antagonists, they have no real representing entity. We know very little about what they are from this game. I know they're in Control and established there, but it shouldn't be assumed that everyone who plays Firebreak has played Control. It should stand on its own, especially not being labeled as a direct sequel. And taking it on its own, we're provided really with no explanation of what the Hiss are, what they want to achieve, and why they want to achieve it. Or at the very least, no speculation from characters in the game about these things to have a sense of mystery or intrigue. The most interesting thing about them is that there are 2 types of them in normal human clothing wielding guns, these security guard get-up types, and these beefy juggernaut armored types.
Damn, boy, he's thick!
Which made me wonder if the Hiss used to be humans that were corrupted, since they're humanoid in form anyways for the most part, and corruption is a big element to the game. These security guards may well just be other FBC employees, and that was kind of a creepy and sort of sad thing to think about. But at this point, my imagination is having to compensate for the game, since it doesn't really provide much of anything itself. Design-wise and functionality-wise, they also might as well just be zombies for the most part. I would have liked to see them lean into making the Hiss more demonic, twisted, evil, and menacing looking, but I ended up feeling pretty unintimidated by them, a fact that's made worse by the gameplay, which I'll get into later. Anyways, getting off track, my point being is that, like with story, character is also something kept very much at arm's length here, if not absent entirely. I never really learned anything about the Firebreak operatives. I never really got a sense of their personalities outside of them just being a bit jokey and not taking the situation very seriously.
Let's be prompt and efficient!
Also, side note, downing and respawning in this game is, I think, a bit unintentionally hilarious with the voice acting. It's always like those perfectly cut Scream videos.
Got here as fast as I could!
But it's a real shame they neglect these elements, considering how strong I know Remedy's character and plot writing can be. And that brings me to my next point, which is tone. This game leans pretty far into the silly side. Don't get me wrong, there are silly lighthearted elements to Remedy's other games, Best Boy, Mayor Setter and Alan Wake 2 being a good example, if you know you know. But here the goofiness is a lot more full on, and I think it can, and to an extent does work for this kind of game. It's a tone set well with this really charming and goofy puppet video that they posted as a sort of in-world worker training video.
Guys, a little help here?
These really would be right at home in the game itself as little tutorials. I don't know why they only made them to be posted online, but anyways. I think having Firebreak in the world of Control is working against it, because Control doesn't really have that tone at all. And this is the problem when you try to create extended universes in media in general, is they kind of need to be tonally consistent with one another, or it muddies the waters a bit. This is also why people talk about, say, MCU fatigue, to give an obvious example. Because that universe started with Iron Man, all of those films and shows are tonally in line with Iron Man in that universe. If they inserted, say, Dark Knight into the MCU, it'd feel weird. You'd be like, why so serious? Pun intended. And that's essentially what this feels like to me. I think this kind of tone would work better for something standalone, separate from Control. They could still fill it with ties and Easter eggs to other games like Control, the way, say, Ubisoft do with Assassin's Creed and the Watch Dogs universes.
Why is he doing that? He's an assassin, Dad. Well, I mean, why is he talking to the guy he just killed? It's a confession? That's just dumb.
But stating from the universe of Control outright, and then having a major faction of Control, the FBC, take center stage in this game, ties it very directly together, and because of that, the tone change feels a lot more jarring in my opinion. In saying that though, the lighthearted goofy tone is one of the more entertaining and unique aspects of the game, which is why I'd rather see the direct Control connection change over changing the tone itself, because I do think it works well for it, even if I think it feels a bit weird being in the same universe as Control. The wackiness of the game and its overall colorful presentation and concepts are some of the best things going for it. I love the moments where it plays into the office setting, like having a giant boss fight made of sticky notes. I also love the revive animation, it's hilarious. You just smack the shit out of your buddy until they get up. Could you imagine going to a hospital for, I don't know, like sepsis, and the doctor just absolutely bodies you and you're like, "Doctor, why?" And they're just like,
Shift ain't over.
To summarize on story and character, I think they should have at least communicated the basic premise of the game, in the game first and foremost, not just the promotional material. The Firebreak team should have been made up of more dedicated and fleshed out personalized characters. Keep all the cosmetic customization and even the menu option for choosing a voice, but at least name all the voices and have them know and interact more directly with each other, rather than just sort of generally reacting to generic action in the game like "got him" when you kill a strong enemy, or "uh-oh" when health is low or whatever. Have them be more like this instead.
Zoe's never gonna go for a man like me.
Ellis, ask yourself, what would you do?
Oh, bro, man, that reminds me of this.
Girl, what are you
I wasn't
doing?
thinking.
Listen, if you let your guard down for 1 minute, we all pay the price.
I'd also say keep the light tone, but don't connect it as directly to Control as it does. Have a lore submenu with hidden collectible documents to find on the maps to learn more about what's going on. Give us more on our antagonist with a leading force to focus in on, and contextualize why they're there and why we need to fight them. And finally, don't assume that everyone who is playing this has played Control. This is a totally different kind of game, so it stands to reason it would attract a totally different audience. I think that's where putting the main story in trailers came from. This assumption that the only people who play this game are people with past involved knowledge and experience with Remedy and their stuff. It will unfortunately and likely alienate a lot of people, but also it's odd for Control fans, as I've seen many of them confused about why important characters from Control, like the main character Jesse, are just totally absent here. But that's about all I have to say for story, characters, and tone. Let's move on. I'm just gonna rip the band-aid right off. There are only 5 things to do in this game.
That's it?
And for the €40 price tag, a lot have been saying that's too steep, and I would definitely agree.
There is nothing this game does better than any other game, and it has a pretty steep price tag for what it offers. I don't really get it.
But on a development and production level, I can see why they would feel right charging €40 for it, especially with Remedy's own brand quality recognition. But in terms of gameplay offering, any indie studio would put out this gameplay for maybe 10 to 20 euro tops, just without as much quality and polish from resources at their disposal. That said, unfortunately, in the long run, I think they would have made more money here with a smaller price tag, since that cost is going to put a lot of people off of buying, or draw a lot of people into seeking refunds once they discover how little this game offers in terms of content at release. Whereas, with a lower price tag, I think people would treat the game much more in good faith for what it offers. Personally, I don't mind spending that much just because I want to support Remedy. I think they're one of the most important voices in gaming at the moment, and I want to see them continue to make games, even if this one didn't really do it for me at least. And for anyone thinking, well, they'll add more content. They've already put out a roadmap for what they'll be adding into the game later on. Yeah, that's well and good for the dedicated fanbase who are in the know, but for a general audience, most of the damage is done at launch, and given the reception I've seen the game get on places like Steam, that damage isn't negligible. I'll talk a bit here on performance issues. For the most part, the game ran fine. I think there were maybe 1 or 2 instances of frame rate slowdown when a lot was happening on higher difficulties with max corruption, but not the worst I've seen in a game. I had a weird graphical bug on the 4th job frequency shift, where you get covered in this pink material that's supposed to wash off, but I had some of the textures of it permanently stuck and floating on my guy for the entire level. I also had this weird audio bug where the rank increase post-match sound effect just kept going in the menu until the next match started. Enemy pathing is also a bit weird here. I know they can ignore you and attack machines to break them, but it can feel kinda dumb to see them just run right past you.
Look at me, sure. Look at me, sure.
The hiss.
No.
On a positive note though, I never got stuck in the game's geometry or fell through the floor or got soft locked in a level, so that's pretty good. A couple times the enemies and my teammates would freeze for a few seconds, but in the couple instances this happened, they'd thankfully unfreeze when we'd continue playing instead of being booted back to the lobby, and I suspect this is more of a connectivity with the host issue rather than an issue with the game itself, so I'll give it a pass there. You boot up the game for the first time, and the first thing you're greeted with is select job, which is a phrase that's already sent chills of fear down the spines of most gamers out there. I don't want to select a job. What do you think I'm on YouTube? But sure, whatever. You open the job select screen, and it only lets you pick one. I'm gonna say right now, I don't know why they did this. The jobs don't ramp up in difficulty, there's no continuous story, there's no reason to not just have them all available right from like rip. It's pretty needlessly limiting. The only reason I could see them doing this is they want players to experience all of them, but if I'm having fun, that should be my motive to experience all of them regardless. If someone gets the game, plays the first couple jobs, then decides they're not having fun and peace out, they're going to do the exact same thing if they picked any 2 jobs of their choosing, because this just isn't a case of if you don't like one job you might love another, because spoilers, they all play pretty much similarly to one another, as I'll get into later when I cover each job individually. Every job in this game has a 3-level structure, with each clearance level ramping up in length and difficulty. You can choose the base difficulty of the level, which only affects how much of the hiss the game throws at you. By the way, they inflict the same damage to the player across all difficulties, oddly enough, more on that in a bit. And finally, you can choose how corrupted the level is, which introduces these like wildcard items that float around and affect gameplay in ways to make it more difficult. For example, the traffic light, which when red will inflict damage if you move, the crowbar, which breaks machines around the map, and the lantern, which disables light sources in the map, including your flashlight. These corruption items can only be destroyed with a special weapon called a black rock neutralizer, which can be found hidden around the map. These guns are pretty cool too, kind of remind me of the pulverizer and ravager from Doom the Dark Ages, with how it grinds down and spits out a spray of projectiles. Its reload animation is pretty fun too. You can also destroy corrupt items with the Black Rock Rounds perk, but like with the story, the game itself never tells you any of this. I only know this from online promotional material.
But you can chase them away if you find a Black Rock neutralizer.
Which again, just why? Then you have the kit system, of which there are 3 types to choose from. The fix kit provides a wrench that can quickly fix most manually broken things like pipes or panels. The jump kit, which as seen in the trailer you can use to get high jumps, but also can repair electronics like generators by zapping them. And finally, my most frequently chosen kit, the Splash Kit. This gives you a water gun, which can be used to put out fires and remove hazardous effects from teammates, most common effect being when they're on fire. Hitting enemies with the water cannon also makes them weaker, so it can be used in a strategic combat way as well. Likewise, enemies catching fire will buff them, so that's another thing to watch out for. The water gun doesn't directly contribute to tasks as efficiently as the other kit items do, but it does help out on occasion in ways I'll get into later when I talk about each job. Every kit also has a secondary item that you can throw down to help your team. So the Fix Kit has a turret that shoots water projectiles, the Jump Kit has a boombox that can distract enemies to it, and the Splash Kit has a water tank that can heal enemies near it. And I'll bring up the upgrade system here because it's related. For some reason, the exact same skills need to be bought with each of the 3 kits, just with slightly different requirements to unlock them on the left side skills path. Another decision I do not understand. If they had kit specific upgrades on one section of the page, I'd get that, but the general skills of like showers give health faster, reloading is faster, repairing is faster, all need to be re-unlocked with each kit. I just don't get this decision. But also, coming back to the other requirements, I have no idea what some of these symbols are or represent. After playing for 10 hours and playing a good bit with each of the 3 kits, I didn't earn a single one of some of these things. And there's, as far as I could find, no indication in the game provided, yet again, to the player of what these are or how you earn them, leaving me just flat out unable to figure out how to earn a bunch of the very basic skills, particularly for the Fix and Jump kits, frustratingly. Editor from the future here. I noticed while going over footage that you can see these symbols under potential rewards, but only when you select a job yourself. I rarely saw this because I spent most of my time playing through quick play. Still weird that I never earned some of those upgrade points at all though. Anyways, back to me from the past. And finally, in the kit system, you can unlock these attachments, which can only be used occasionally on your kit tools to do a good bit of damage, like the little piggy bank you can put on your wrench, which is pretty cute and silly. And that's it for the kit and upgrade system. Quick note on guns you have to work with. Starting out, it's very little. You have a double barrel shotgun, a revolver, and a submachine gun. And that's it. All of the guns in this game handle very well and feel very satisfying and punchy to use with good sound design and visual feedback at least. On the side of customization though, sadly, beyond cosmetic paint jobs, you can't really customize or specifically upgrade any of these guns it seems. I ended up using the SMG mostly, since it was the most effective against larger groups which the game tends to throw at you more frequently than the tanky enemies. And against them it's not so bad either. One round into the head of a juggernaut hiss and it's taken care of pretty much. So weapon variety and customization is definitely very underwhelming here. You can unlock more guns after progressing a bit in the Essential Requisitions tab, but I worry that most players won't even bother getting to that point of progression since they'll have experienced much if not all of what the game has to offer long before they've even unlocked another gun or two, which is a shame because it looks like there's some cool shit here to mess around with that most players will likely just never see. And I've used some of these guns and they do feel rewarding so far as they make the gameplay easier and make you feel more powerful. There's a full auto rifle you can unlock that I used after the SMG for example.
I've heard good things about this one.
Which had a much more generous ammo pool and did a decent bit more damage, so I found myself running to the ammo refill stations far less frequently with it. It also has a silly reload animation where your guy like slaps this plate-shaped magazine on the gun a couple of times before slotting it in for some reason. That was pretty charming.
Now I'm all soggy.
Enemy variety is unfortunately also pretty lacking. First of all, they are not nearly as threatening overall as I think they should be.
Bruh, look at this dude.
I rarely die to them, even on extreme difficulty. This is largely in part due to what I mentioned earlier about Hiss inflicting the same amount of damage to the player across all difficulties. The difficulty setting only affects just how many enemies the game throws at you and how many difficult enemy types get thrown at you at once, which is why a lot of the time, even on a high difficulty, I found myself just barely phased by enemy attacks.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
As for what enemy types are on offer, I don't know all of their names, so I'm just going to refer to them by description. You have your standard zombie type hiss, which just runs at you, usually with a pipe or something in hand to smack you with. They also come at you in large numbers. You have a security guard hiss, which will also be in large numbers and shoot at you from a distance. You have these chair hiss that float around in the air and throw projectiles at you that do a decent bit more damage, since it looks like they have to charge them up a bit before throwing them at you. You have these big reflective floating ball enemies. I honestly don't even know what their attack is. Maybe if you touch them, they damage you. Maybe they buff nearby enemies or spawn enemies. Honestly, no idea. They're just big floating spheres. Not that strong either. Very odd enemy. Then you have the juggernaut hits, which are a bit bullet spongy and will sometimes have machine guns they pelt you with, and other times explosive launchers. Then you have another strong enemy type with these big armored hiss that swing these giant pipes at you. They can also do a lot of damage, but are mostly easy to evade as long as they don't corner you. Generally, I try to get them on their own by taking out everything around them first, then bait them into doing a dive attack, which locks them in place for a bit, allowing you to hit their weak point, which is like a normal looking zombie. Hiss's upper body flopping around, hanging out of its back. Hitting them there seems to be the only way to deal damage. You can also get one teammate to distract them while you shoot their weak point from behind. That works too. These, in my opinion, are the most threatening enemy in the game. You also have these hiss that sort of just flop around in the air. I don't know what the design intention is with these ones. They're a decent bit bullet spongy, but not a massive deal. And finally, you have a hiss enemy type that, as far as I can tell, only shows up on the 5th and final job, totally unceremoniously and without explanation, almost like an unspoken boss. I'm saving most of the job-specific enemy types for later when I go over each job individually, but I'll talk about this one here because it looks like it's designed to be just another part of the hiss horde, so it can cloak itself and fly around. You can still hit it while it's cloaked, but it's hard to tell where its hitbox is exactly, and I don't think it does much damage hitting it while it's cloaked. If you get close to it, however, it uncloaks itself and spits out projectiles at you, which by far do the most damage to you than any other enemy or non-environmental attack in the game. I still say the armored guys are the most threatening, but that's just because you see them a lot more often, whereas with this enemy type, as I said, you only see them once and that's it. An interesting enemy concept, but odd and a slightly confusing execution. And that's all the enemy types. Are they fun to shoot at? Kind of, at times. Headshots are often an instant kill on a lot of the fodder type enemies, even with the fully automatic guns, so it can be satisfying to clear out a horde of them by rapidly getting headshots, but visually they're kinda lame. They remind me of the Back 4 Blood zombies. There's just not a lot of charm, character, or personality behind their design in my opinion, and they don't have much of any audio tells like say the Left 4 Dead Special Infected have. Though the security guard ones do scream like real people when they get hurt, which again is kind of interesting narrative wise and comes back to my theory from earlier.
But hey, that's just a theory. Again.
And that one enemy type that can cloak I mentioned makes a crying noise. So all in all, 8 enemy types, one of which only shows up once, and the rest are pretty visually and functionally. I also wouldn't have minded a bit more visual feedback on inflicting damage on the hiss. For the most part, they just sort of absorb bullets until they go down, but oh well. Map design, I'll say, is pretty strong. At times I feel like it's a shame the gameplay is as lacking as it is because the spaces to play in it are quite distinct from one another and memorable, which I guess is the least you'd hope for, being that there's only 5 of them, but considering the game takes place in one big location, essentially that's mostly office themed, that they get this much visual variety out of their map locations is pretty impressive. You've got the map on Hotfix, which reminds me a bit of Freddy Krueger's Dream World, with like all the rustic pipes and the like heat, I guess, to be quite on the nose. You've got the offices in Paper Chase, which feels the most in line with the general vibe and aesthetic of the game. You've got these big open ethereal caves in Ground Control. You've got this industrial factory type setting in Frequency Shift, and you've got this fake ski resort that reminds me a bit of Nuketown in Freezer Duty. They feel interesting and fun enough to run around. They're a nice balance of not feeling overly straightforward and fake in the sense of manufactured for gameplay, and they don't feel overly convoluted and confusing either. I never found myself lost or confused about where I was. Even when I respawned in a safe area that I hadn't been to yet that a teammate opened, I was able to pretty quickly figure out where I was usually. As for features in each map, you will have shower stations to stand in and heal yourself. There's an ammo station to refill your ammo. Sometimes shower and ammo stations might be broken, so they're worth fixing first before you move on to do anything else. There's also typically one of the 2 in each zone of a map, with the exception of extreme difficulty. I think I remember a shower station not being in a place it usually is in the first job, Hotfix. There are these safe rooms you can find.
Safe room secured.
that usually have a sink in them to heal yourself and boxes of ammo to pick up. The most recently opened safe room also becomes the new respawn point of the job, so you'll want to try and find them as you go along and open them to avoid backtracking through a lot of the map if you respawn. The number of respawns your team has is also dependent on the difficulty, and I think also the number of teammates you have in the lobby, but don't quote me on that one, I'm not entirely sure. Speaking of dying in the game, a pet peeve of mine is that you can't crawl when you're downed. I don't know if they just didn't want to add a crawling animation. I can't think of why they would not let you crawl here. So overall, not many complaints about the maps, aside from the obvious I suppose that there should really be more of them at launch, like 10 minimum really. So once you've selected your job, which for the first instance will be hotfix because you have no other choice as mentioned before, you've selected your difficulty, your corruption level, and your kit. The first thing you'll have to do here is fix fans, and that's it. This takes all but a few seconds, especially if you have a fix or a jump kit. It can go even faster since you can bypass the repair gimmick almost entirely. But let's say you don't have those kits. You are treated with the most overused and by far, in my opinion, worst mechanic of the game. These little repair quick time mini games where if you're on console, you just press the bumpers in the sequence shown on screen, or on keyboard you press the Q and E keys until a meter fills up. If you hit a wrong button, you get shocked and take damage. Repeat over and 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 over again. It is brutal.
Now, would you kindly
run up to everything and press the LB and the RB button over and over again.
Which is where you come in, Chief. Get Cortana off this ship. Keep her safe from the enemy. If they capture her...
Just press the left and right bumper.
Using your knife is even faster than switching to your pistol. Nice!
Your left and right bumper pressing skills are remarkable. I know they had people playtest this game. I applied to be a playtester for it myself when Remedy put out the open call. I've got to wonder how nobody in playtesting gave feedback like, hey, this repair minigame got pretty old after like the third time I did it. Maybe having it not incredibly prevalent in the gameplay all the time is a good idea. I can see an argument for it that if you are cooperating with a team that has all three kits, you'll see this minigame far less often, but that's still acknowledging it as a poor mechanic that's worth skipping as often as you possibly can. But let's not just shit on it and call it a day. I'll instead suggest an alternative that I think would have been preferable. So let's say every player, regardless of their kit, has a little robot called a jack of all trades, and instead of going to fix or repair things or put out fires without the right kit triggering this mechanic, place our little trusty robot buddy there and he does the job. But not only does he take longer to do the task than the appropriate kit items would, but he can also be damaged and needs to be protected while he's working away. And if he breaks, then to fix him, you need to do the repair minigame. But that is the one and only instance in the gameplay where you will see this mechanic. That would be my suggestion at least. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments on it. I'm not a game designer after all. Anyways, you repair the fans and go back to the elevator, level over. Then in part 2, you repair fans in the same area again. Then you go to a new area of the map and repair more fans and then go back to the elevator to extract again. Okay. Kind of weird, but maybe the third and final hotfix level will provide something unique. Oh, I need to repair fans in the first area again, and then go to the next area and repair fans in there again. There's just even more fans to repair now. Okay. I mean, I've heard of OnlyFans, but this is just ridiculous. No? Nobody? Okay. Well, maybe the third area will be something different, and thankfully it actually is. Kind of, mostly. Well, you're not repairing fans. And for one, I will say, I think this area is pretty cool. It definitely feels significant in like a final area of a section. And it's also the area where I discovered the real threat of this game. It is not the hiss, it's the environment. I may be alone on this this one, but when I say every time I downed or I saw a teammate get downed, it was rarely from the hiss. Much more often it was just the environment. So those broken fans I mentioned that we needed to repair spew out fire intermittently, and at the end of this section you've essentially got a giant room-sized fan here with the furnace occasionally spewing fire out and heating the entire room, and you need to get in cover in order not to get burned by it.
It's powering up another flare soon. Be ready.
Except sometimes that just didn't seem to work for some reason, and fire will wipe you out with no remorse in this game. I played this section later on extreme difficulty with full corruption, and it felt like I was in actual hell. Having a teammate with a splash kit coordinate with you is pretty much essential in that circumstance. This section was also kind of the only circumstance where I felt like I was really engaged in a team dynamic, and not just me and some other dudes all basically just doing the same thing, just more efficiently because there's more of us running off and doing it in different places. What you need to do in this final room anyways with the furnace is fill up these barrels and then place them into the furnace at the end of the room, then seal it and leave. Remember this concept of picking things up and putting them in another place because it will come back later. But anyways, I was in a game where one of my teammates was at the front of the room filling the barrels and sending them down the zipline to the other side where I was with a splash kit, and another teammate was then placing those filled barrels on the zipline into the furnace while I made sure to keep us cooled off with my water cannon. Even though in theory these covers should be doing that, they were so unreliable. I felt like this was the only real way to tackle it without getting downed constantly or my teammate getting down constantly. But that feeling of teamwork that I enjoy from co-op games was only felt here. So once you've sealed the furnace and have to get back to the elevator like usual, often the game will throw a boss hiss at you.
You can't evacuate with a strong hiss in the field. Get it dead.
You'll see a health bar pop up at the top of the screen, but it's always just a bullet sponge buffed version of one of the hiss types you see normally. Nothing really unique about it or its behavior, unfortunately. And while I said it appears when you have to go back to the elevator to extract, that's mostly the case, but not always. Sometimes they just throw them at you at random, but usually only once in a level. I will also say, just a clarification point, for this entire section of the video where I cover each job in the game, in the interest of fairness, when I say things like you just fix fans or you just transport barrels into a furnace, yes, you are always also pretty much constantly dealing with oncoming hordes of hiss while you're doing these things, along with regularly engaging in ammo and health management, as well as occasional teammate assistance like putting them out with the water cannon if they're on fire. And all of that is supposed to be the main gameplay loop and draw, more so than the tasks themselves. And you know what? That's a fair point. In fact, I would say if each of these 5 jobs were just hiss survival round-based areas, with all the repairing and toolkit mechanics just activating optional environmental things like traps to use to your advantage for survival, I actually think this would be a far more fun and replayable game. But since the tasks have very little variety and overly streamline the gameplay to the point that when I think about replaying levels, I think, I would replay this for the shooter combat gameplay, but I don't want to keep repairing things and carrying items from point A to point B in the exact same way, doing the same static repair minigame over and over again. And the fact that progression revolves entirely around these fairly dull, menial, repetitive tasks takes the focus away from the survival combat aspect of the game, rather than adds to it, in my opinion. Okay, well, it was just the first job, and since it's the only one it lets a beginner player pick, maybe it's just like a tutorial and the other jobs will have more going on in them and won't feel like they're mostly just running around and doing chores and busy work. I'm sure that won't be the case. This is a remedy we're talking about, right? So let's try the next job and find out. The next job is called Paper Chase. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Oh, you shoot pieces of paper.
What's the big deal? It's only garbage.
Garbage? In the right hands, this paper is a gold mine of entertainment, a spectacular afternoon of fun, a treasure trove of
garbage.
Just like paper on the floor and paper on the walls. For the first 2 levels of the job, just level 1, shoot paper here. Level 2, shoot even more paper in the same place, then more paper. Oh god, in this other area. And just like in Hotfix and every other job in this game, you'll have to go through these 2 areas all over again. Also in level 3 on a first time playthrough. I'll give the paper mechanic a little bit more credit. It's not just shooting paper. I mentioned earlier the water gun helped out in some way on a job task, and that's this. If you wet the paper first, then you can destroy it faster. There you go. You also have an enemy type unique to this job, which are the sticky note hiss that are just like dudes made of sticky notes. And this brings in another unique threat to this level, which is turning into sticky note hiss yourself. No! Only if getting hit by and dying to these enemies specifically was the only way that can happen, I wouldn't mind this mechanic so much. But for some reason they decided that just stepping on sticky notes on the floor causes them to cover your guy and affect your vision with what looks like slices of cheese thrown on your screen.
Cheese, 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 cheesy, cheese, 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 cheese.
I think that's a fun idea, but I don't think it should have been caused by just walking over sticky notes as well. Especially when not only are they everywhere, but the game respawns them in previous areas after you progress that you will have to run through again to get back to the elevator. But alright, okay. Hotfix had a neat idea in the last level of the job, so maybe we've got something cool at least here, right? And actually, yeah, sort of. As I referenced earlier, there's a giant sticky note boss fight set piece at the final area of this job. Both visually and conceptually, this is a pretty fun and unique idea, which plays into the office setting aesthetic and lighthearted tone nicely, as mentioned before. In terms of gameplay execution though, wanna guess how you deal with him? By repairing the same generator types you use to fix the fans in Hotfix, with the same button pressing repair minigame.
Make it stop! Make it stop!
Only every time you do that, you then also have to run over and pull a switch that electrocutes the boss to do damage. At this point, just let me shoot the damn thing, please. We're only 2 levels in and I am so exhausted by this minigame mechanic. Also, there are death pits in this final boss area that I accidentally jumped into twice. This, as far as I could tell, really is the only section of the game which has places you can just fall to your death, bizarrely. I could be totally wrong here though. On to job 3, baby! Hey, remember when you had to shoot paper on the environment in the second job? And remember at the end of the first job when you had to pick up barrels and carry them over to a furnace? Well, what if we shot eggs on the environment, which drop an irradiated rock that we have to then pick up and carry over to a minecart, and then to build on these very fun ideas with another equally exhilarating idea, what if we slowly push the minecart all the way across the level by walking into it? Doesn't that sound fun? Okay, yeah, I'll be brief with this one. The special event at the end of the 3rd level is pushing the cart into a rocket and then holding out for the rocket to launch. Neat spectacle, I guess, but nothing crazy. And if you hold the irradiated rocks that you need to put into the minecart for too long in your hands, then you get radiation poisoning and have to wash it off in the shower. If only the poor souls at Chernobyl knew about this little trick, eh? But anyways, yeah, that's really all there is to say about this job.
Oh, thank God.
Now on to the 4th job, which is called Frequency Shift. And right away, my advice on this one is have someone with a fix kit on the team. There's this pink goop material everywhere, and all you essentially do is shoot it off these turbines it's attached to, repair these cables on the floor, find and place panels back on this emitter thing, and repair them, and that's it. And the reason why I recommended a fix kit is because if you have a wrench, you can repair all of the cables and the panels on the emitters with just a couple of whacks. Much faster and will save you so much time and pain from doing the repair minigame thing over and over. The pink goop can slow down your movement if you walk over it, and similar to the sticky notes, it can build up on you, which makes you more susceptible to damage since it explodes if your little goop meter is full.
Got him, Pink!
But you can wash it off in the shower like almost all things in this game.
I hate to be the one to say it, but you need a shower or something fierce.
Hey, Okay, yeah, fair enough. There are also these little glowy parts on some of the pink goop that will explode, which can be handy for clearing out big gooped areas. But sometimes you won't see that there's an explodey ball on one side of the goop, then you can get caught in an explosion you had no awareness would occur, which can feel a bit cheap, and again brings me back to how the environment in this game is often more threatening than the main enemy itself. This is the one and only instance in the game where there's no unique or special activity in the final level of the job. The only difference in this area, as far as I can tell, is that the visibility is just much worse, not just because there's more pink shit everywhere blocking your path, but also because it's just darker for some reason. Okay, I shouldn't say for some reason. There is technically a reason. If the lights are out in an area, that usually just means you need to activate them on one of these power boxes. I still think that this area does stand out as being the most poorly lit in the entire game, even for areas that have the lights out. But other than that, yeah, just fix another emitter and then go back to the elevator. Speaking of the elevator, actually, I forgot to mention up until now, but better late than never, if you spam the elevator button, you can make it come down faster. Like they know we want to just get this shit over with as quickly as humanly possible.
Who's ready to go home?
On to our final job, titled Freezer Duty, and boy oh boy, we've gone through a lot of pretty lackluster stuff. Maybe finally here, after all this build-up, the last job available will be different, and that underwhelming feeling at the end of the previous job is just setting us up to have our minds blown here.
No, not really.
Well, you know how in the first job, you picked up barrels and carried them to a furnace, and in the third job, you picked up rocks and carried them to a minecart? Well, clearly, they thought this was awesome, because now you pick up heaters and bring them to these ice shard glitch things around the map, only you need to do the repair mini game on every single one of these heaters if you don't have a jump gun. And if that's not enough, they can also run out over time, so you'll need to reheat them again by doing the same mini game again every time for about 5 of these ice glitches or so per section in each level. Hooray! Thank God. You know, I was worried there for a second that they wouldn't have this mini game in the last job. Could you imagine? But at least, unlike the last job, there is something different in the third zone of the highest clearance level in this job. Destroying these things isn't the main task to do, but sadly they just said screw it and went ahead and threw a bunch of these ice glitch things into that area anyways, but also put absolutely no heaters in that area, so if you want to get rid of them, you have to backtrack into the previous area and then run all the way back with them. But what about the last section where I said the heaters and ice glitches aren't even the main objective? Well, just wait until you hear this. In the last section, instead of picking up heaters and carrying them to ice glitches, you have to pick up mannequins and carry them over to a ski lift chair that rotates around the room endlessly. Apparently as a sacrifice to feed some entity or something, I have no idea. I was pretty checked out at this point.
Today, after you knock out the frost anomalies, I'm gonna open up the service terminal so you can handle the feed. You see, the ski lift only gets like this when it doesn't have any passengers, then it can freeze to death. But since the FBC got no one around with that much of a death wish, we make it settle for mannequins. Good thing it ain't smart. What?
But yeah, pretty much the same thing, but at least you don't have to do the repair mechanic on the mannequins. Silver lining, I suppose. And also, as said before, the jump kick gun would have started the heaters much faster, and I should have absolutely used that instead, but unfortunately I didn't try out the jump gun to see how it worked until later after this, so I suffered through doing this same repair minigame. God knows how many times to finish this job. Like I said, with a fix kit being essential for the previous job, the jump kit is pretty essential here, so don't make the same mistake I did and play without it. I played through all 3 levels in this job solo. You wanna guess how long it took me? Okay, so from the time the elevator doors opened on the first clearance level to the time the elevator doors closed after extracting on the 3rd clearance level was 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 1 second. And that's with no deaths, just lighting heaters, carrying them around for almost 2 whole hours. 2 hours? The only other unique thing about this level is, as the name implies, your guy can become frozen. No, not that kind of frozen.
Sorry you had to see that.
In the 2nd and 3rd area, the rooms can, at certain intervals, become extremely cold, slowing down both yourself and enemies alike, because that's what this job needed, to move along even slower than it already was. As far as I could tell, being in the slowed, frozen state doesn't do damage to you, and since enemies are slowed too, not just you, the same with the pink goop from the previous job, there's not that much of a downside to even being frozen. You can, if you're not careful, accidentally set yourself on fire with the heaters, so I guess there's that environmental hazard, but that's pretty much it for this one. And with that, we've reached the end of content offerings from FBC Firebreak.
Of course, there are worlds more to discover.
Nope.
No, there is not. Until they add more content in future, this is all the game launched with. An underwhelming amount of weapon variety to start with, underwhelming enemies to shoot, underwhelming story and character elements, 5 decent maps that all offer underwhelming gameplay, and a severe over-reliance on this one single mechanic. Want to fix the lights? Do this mechanic. Want to refill your ammo? Do this mechanic. Want to repair generators, fans, cables, panels, heaters? Do this mechanic.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Hell, I don't have footage of it, but if you don't have the splash kit water cannon, you apparently need to do this mechanic to put out fires on the ground as well. And if you're not doing that mechanic or fighting the hiss, then you're shooting inanimate objects like paper or eggs, or you're picking up things and carrying them to other places like barrels, rocks, heaters, and mannequins. I was initially planning on doing a job ranking section of the video here, but the more I thought about it, the more redundant it felt. I really just didn't feel all that strongly about any one of these jobs over the other. At best, I'd just be ranking map aesthetics, but that's not really all that interesting. At the moment, Remedy seems to be committed to improving the game, with word that they plan to improve onboarding in particular, which is good, and addresses a few issues I had with the game, as mentioned before, and they have my utmost support and respect for not just abandoning ship. I really hope they manage to pull off a No Man's Sky or an EA Battlefront 2 and recover this game's reputation. If there's anything I'd say about Remedy as a company, they do not at all seem the type to just rip gamers off, take their money and run with a lazy cash grab title. I think they genuinely wanted and believed they were making a fun game here, and were just trying something new for the studio. They were maybe just a bit misguided in a few ways and underestimated this genre of gaming. If I was to give any humble advice to them going forward, I'd say focus on the hiss first and foremost. The hiss are the one constant through line bread and butter of the game. Make them as fun and dynamic to go up against as possible, and double down on them being the core aspect of the game. So for example, have the jobs be to just clear out zones they've invaded rather than random mundane busy work. Add a pure survival mode as well with global and friend leaderboards. I think that could work really well for this game. An infected hiss versus firebreaker team mode would also be welcome.
Infected.
Add weapon modification outside of paint jobs, and add more named characters like Pencil Pusher, as well as more story elements and connectivity across each job. And of course, add more jobs, but they're already doing that anyways, with one new job titled Outbreak releasing in fall, and another titled Blackout releasing in winter. But if it's just going to be more of the same, I don't think that'll be enough to sustain interest. There's been somewhat conflicting news on how the game is performing in the months since release. On the one hand, they hit a 1 million player milestone towards the end of June, likely due to it being on Game Pass. Meanwhile, over on Steam, as of recording this, they have an active player count of less than 50. This early into the release of a multiplayer game by such a big name publisher, that's really not a great sign, but I'm hoping they can bring people back. I don't want this game to disappear from existence like their other attempts to deviate from the Remedy norm. I really do want to see it succeed, but we'll just have to wait and see if this iconic publisher has what it takes to save it. If you watched to the end, I appreciate it a ton. Thank you so much.
What is that? I don't know. Alan, grab it. Grab it. I'm not gonna grab that. You grab it.
And if I made any mistakes during this video, or if you disagree with something I said, feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to keep doing these kinds of videos as a full-time thing. The kind of projects that I'll be working on and uploading to the channel might be a bit chaotic. Right now I'm working on scripting a video discussing the 2015 stop-motion animated film Anomalisa.
I think I might have psychological problems.
But I also wanted to do a series of videos deep diving into Remedy's history, as well as covering all of their games in their catalog, which if you're watching this video might appeal to you, maybe? So if that's something you'd be interested in seeing, I'd be happy to have you back for it. But for now, if you'll excuse me, I have some serious gaming to get back to.